Hi, everyone. My name is Mark Love. I'm an account manager with Chemours Refrigerants. And today is the second installment of our Chill Zone series. This is a monthly series where we're going to take specific topics that are related to the A2L transition and do a little deeper dive than what I think you'll normally get. And the intent behind this is really to provide you with more detailed information at the branch level so that when you start getting asked these questions by your customers, you'll be able to talk with them with a greater understanding around all aspects of A2L. So for today, the webinar is going to be led by Don Gillis. Don leads the series. Many of you, I'm sure, already know Don. I will say as an editorial comment, I've been giving training for probably close to almost 20 years. And literally every time I listen to Don, either in a webinar or training, I learn something new. So I'll ask as you guys just sit back and listen. I think Don's going to go over some really pertinent and detailed information. I think today's topic is spot on. It's very detailed around trucks, tools, and tanks. So a very detailed level on these aspects of A2L. So with that, Don, one other thing, as we go through the webinar, if you have questions, please enter them in the GoToWebinar question function. I'll be curating them, and then we're going to be playing them back to Don at the end of the presentation. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Don Gillis.
Thanks, Mark. I appreciate the compliments. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in today. Got another version of the Chill Zone. As Mark said, we're going to go over trucks, tools, and tanks. At the end, as Mark said, we'll go over some questions. Let's go through some of these slides I have now. There we go. All right. First and foremost, we have a party. We awarded a Progress Supply, Steve Wilson's, last month at their branch with pizza and soft drinks. So we're going to pull a name from the hat, or a number from the hat, if you will. They have it all figured out behind the scenes, and you'll get pizzas and soft drinks and box of swags, pens, koozies, screwdrivers, etc., and an Optium polo shirt for the selected attendees. So that's one thing there for tuning in today. I'm going to talk just a little bit about our lineup as far as it goes. I think we all are very familiar already with the 454B. Most OEMs, besides Daikin, are going with 454B, and most of the mini splits, to my surprise, are a little bit of surprise there. But we have an A and a C series, and this is going to be very high level, but I want to share this with you. So you're going to have 454A, 454C, or 454B and 454C, pardon me. The A is going to be, the A and C do the same type of work, okay? They're both for medium and low temp. The C will be for units that call for anything less than 150 GWP. So that would be units less than 200 pounds. Anything over 200 pounds would be 454A. Again, the same components make up that blend. That'll be R32 and R1234YF, okay? So real quick, what's an HFO? For those of you that missed it last week, I want to go over this. So we know what CFCs are, we know what HCFCs are, we know what HFCs, which we're moving from right now because of the global warming potential. And now we're moving into the new kid on the block, if you will, the HFO, or hydrofluoroolefin. By definition, an olefin is simply telling you that you have two carbon atoms next to each other. And this is the kind of the secret sauce with an HFO. It's very unstable, so it's a little harder to manufacture, but that's the beauty of it when it gets exposed up in the atmosphere. It breaks up a lot quicker, okay, compared to an HFC does, all right? So for example, I'm going to compare 134A on the left-hand side, which we've used in medium temp or the automobile industry for years, okay, and 1234YF, HFO molecule R1234YF. And you can see the difference here down here with the in the years. It's 13 years for 134A. It stays in the atmosphere compared to 10 days. So that's really why we're having this conversation. And the last note here, You may not know what the number, the GWP means. Just know this: the higher that number is, the faster it's on the chopping block in the EPA's eyes. And that's who's driving all this. It doesn't matter. It's not a manufacturer. It's not the government. It's the EPA. They put them in charge, and that's the way it is. So we got a comparison of 1430 compared to less than 4. So that's a big deal. And that's why you'll see R1234YF moving forward in a lot of blends moving down the way. Now, this is what it looks like on a PT chart, and you can see how closely it resembles almost exactly. It's a little less charge than the 134A is. Very, very efficient, does the same amount of work. I mean, that's the first and foremost thing we've got to do with refrigerants. That's one of the biggest criteria. Does it do the work? Then we look at GWP, we look at flammability, we look at toxicity and those kind of things. But first and foremost, it has to do the work, okay? Or it's not a good refrigerant, obviously. So I used to say they're coming at my prior job. They're here. Where are they at? Well, if you bought a car in the last 7 years, every car made today in the United States has 1234YF in it, okay? Up until then, it was 9 out of 10. So it's 100% of those cars. 9 out of 10 in the world have 1234YF in it, okay? If you bought a window unit in the last 7 years, a P-TEC unit, a dehumidifier, and a portable system, a mobile system, you've already worked around A2Ls, or you've been around them. Every hotel I stay in, that we all stay in, has a P-TEC unit. I can almost guarantee you that that has R32 in there. It's a lot of that stuff isn't made in the States anymore. It's Asian driven. R32 is derives from Asia and Daikin specifically. And so you see a lot of that already. So it's not really new to us. The takeaway here is that it's already beneath the hood of your car. There's nothing to fear here. And this is just some of the examples of some of the cars today that we're talking about. Now, what's not changing? First of all, first and foremost, currently there are no A2L testing is required. So in other words, take myself, for example, my EPA card will be grandfathered in. There won't be any change in that at all right now. Now, the EPA did take suggestions, and they have not announced those yet. But I have a strange suspicion more than likely nothing's going to change, but I could be wrong. So stay tuned on that. I can't speak for the EPA. Moving forward, future EPA cards, those will have A2L questions on them, like we saw when we took our 410A test. It wasn't really a certification on a federal or state recognized level. It was someone coming into the shop. I know I'm just explaining what happened to us, and said, we're going to give you a test on 410A. It's going to change the world. This is this new refrigerant. And you took it, you got a certificate, but it really wasn't really recognized federally or state. So the same concept here with the A2L refrigerants. Training is important, however, okay? Any training you can get, and there's plenty of it out there, whether it be through Chemours or anyone else. And I'll share some of those other areas, just a handful of them that I like to use and some of my friends use. Just kind of recommend some places. And you probably have your own training set up at your distributor too. So what's not changing is your safety stuff, okay? You're still using the same thing you used before. Nothing's changed there. You're still gonna need a Class B fire extinguisher in your truck. The safety goggles, lockout, tagout, gloves, steel-toed boots, and then hard hats when on like a commercial job or any kind of thing that requires that by the state. And so that stays the same. There's nothing extra there, no surprises. Let's take a look at our trucks for A2L refrigerants. Before we do that, we're going to pop up a poll question. Corey, do you have that question?
Don, the poll question is up, and I can ask it. It says, you will need, so the quick poll question is true, false. You will need new placards for A2Ls
On your service trucks.
on the service trucks. So what we would ask is if you guys, and people are already, they're already ahead of me. They're already starting.
That's good.
What we'll do is we'll just give this maybe just about 30 seconds. Really appreciate everybody filling it out. Right now, just as we'll give it a little bit more time, we have over 55% of the attendees have voted. So we're getting close to 60%. So if you could, I would encourage you to just click what you think. And we'll part of the polling process is we all learn off each other.
Yeah,
So we'll just
great
give it a
point.
couple more seconds. We're at 63% voted. Okay, so we'll close it out. What we ended up getting, Don, was 73% voted false and 27% voted true. We had almost a 70% response rate. So
Wow.
thank you. Yeah,
Wow.
thanks.
That's
to everybody.
incredible. Yeah.
Mhm.
Thanks, everyone.
Yeah.
So the folks that wrote in false, you are correct. No special placards will be required when you go to A2L refrigerants. Box trucks and semis will be different, obviously. So just a high level view of the service vehicles. Under the materials of trade, it's business as usual. What do you mean by that, Don? It's the same restrictions in place as before, and that place was 440 pounds maximum regardless of the hazard. So acetylene, anything, it didn't matter what was in your truck. Now, obviously that's not one tank, but accumulated. So 440 pounds. So to me, that's good news. I mean, they didn't lower the pounds, even though it went to a different level or ASHRAE standard 34 A2L rating. So that's good news. Federally, there are no placards required for service vehicles. So again, it's business as usual. You won't need anything. And that's why we're kind of doing this to get some of those myths out there and get some of that information because it's new to all of us, right? No ventilation required. What I mean by that is there was a lot of rumors going around a couple of years ago, especially with tool manufacturers that would set the shelves up in trucks and stuff, that there possibly could be some vents needed inside the van in case you sprung a leak with the A2L tanks. There's no truth to that. It's going to be as it always was. And then A2L tanks will be able to lay horizontally on the side of their trucks, okay? Here is the actual permit that will be stamped on the tank for the being able to lay horizontally. There was some pushback originally on that, if you don't know the story, and they've got that approved. We did everything that they wanted us to do, the Department of Transportation, so they gave us a special permit. And Chemours did this for the industry, by the way. By us getting passed, it allowed everybody to use our number or this number stamped on their tanks also. So they didn't have to go through all the hurdles that Chemours started on about 3 years ago, from what I understand, okay? Okay, tools. We have another poll question. Mark?
Okay, so poll question number 2. You will need to buy all new tools when using A2L refrigerants. Once again, it's a true false. So you will need to buy all new tools when using A2L refrigerants. True or false? So once again, we'll give about a minute for folks to respond and select which one of the two options they believe to be correct. We have, we're getting much better. We have 66% of the folks already respond. So I will just give it a couple more seconds, but greatly appreciate everybody responding. Okay, we're at 70%. Once again, thank you. It's awesome.
Wow.
So in terms of the poll response, I'm very uniform understanding. This is sort of awesome. About 87%, Don, responded false. Only 13% responded true.
That's great. Yeah, so the answer is false. However, let's talk about that a little bit, okay? So there was a lot of rumors, going around that, and I've heard horror stories of people retooling all their vans and things. So most of the hand tools, if not all of them, will be okay. You move along. Also, anything electrical, from what I'm understanding, and no one's come back and reached out to me and said, hey, that's not necessarily true. So the bottom line is make sure you check with the manufacturer. I've been looking into this for quite some time now because I've been teaching A2Ls for quite some time. And if you go to the manufacturer of your, recovery unit, whatever that looks like, your drills, they have actually done a good job of having a little A2L tab on their tools, and they're showing the model numbers that are approved. And now moving forward, you'll probably see things moving from AC to DC motors and those kind of things. There's a recommended 10-foot radius. It's not required. It's in the UL document. It mentions it, but it's not required. But it's no different than a utility company out on the corner working on power lines or anything like that with their orange cones. So as of right now, it's just a recommendation. So check with the manufacturer or check with your distributor, you guys and girls out there, and confirm that everything you sold them is in fact okay. Okay, don't double check me on that. But as of right now, I've talked to quite a few tool manufacturers, and I won't name drop, but a lot of them have tested it, and quite honestly, a lot of them haven't changed. It's the same product. Unlike new cars, they don't make a new model every year of like recovery machines. So the G Twin 5 or whatever is the latest model still. And what you will see is all of them having A2L compliant on them now. So don't buy anything moving forward that doesn't say A2L compliant, okay? So that's that. And like I said, they've been around for almost 2 years now. And I don't want to name drop any brands. We're not branded here. And I started out with just a few of these when I first started. And as time went on, everywhere I would speak or do some training at, inevitably somebody would come up, a tool manufacturer that would be sitting in the audience and say, hey, we have that stuff too. And so to be fair and balanced here, I started putting everybody's on there. It started to look like a NASCAR. So the takeaway from this is everyone has A2L rated tools out there. So they're not hard to find, and you're probably all giggling because you sell them. So they're out there. I know the few expos I've been to here recently, you can see the A2L sign at their booths from a mile away. Everybody's boasting about it. In fact, I heard one guy say, our tools have always been A2L compliant. I thought that was a cute little marketing scheme there. They've never meant to leak, and they seal up and what have you. So no need to go out and replace all your tools. So when it comes to all these tools again, and we're talking mainly about your detectors and your detectors. As far as detectors, let's talk about detectors for a second. Detectors, as I said earlier, with the 454B product and R32, quite honestly, is you already have those refrigerants in your detector. The 454B is 1234YF, which is already on a detector, and the R32. So the detector should be the same as it was before. Now, on compound gauges, if you're old school, or mercury gauges, if they don't have the refrigerant, obviously you have to get new gauges. If you're a digital person like I am, or a Bluetooth, which I really love, on the digital, you'll just plug them into the computer and get your updates. And that's how that's been done for years now. On the Bluetooth, the app will automatically update itself, so you're good to go there, okay? Again, recovery machines, you'll start to see them say A2L compliant and those kind of things, but quite honestly, it doesn't mean they've changed everything in there. But always check, like I said, if you have something you've had for 20 some years or whatever, check to the manufacturer. They'll have the final say in it. But I haven't heard any horror stories of anyone saying, hey, this model does not work around A2Ls, okay? So a lot of things have been tested, electric hand tools, cordless drills, all kinds of things. Now, I will recommend, unless you're really, really good about purging your lines on every change out, especially if you're in the supermarket industry, because you deal with so many different refrigerants, I would recommend going to different hoses on the A2L refrigerants. That's just a recommendation. I would tell you that almost on anything. I always had 2 or 3 sets of gauges, depending on what I was working on, but just food for thought on that. Okay, let's talk about tanks. Now, I think I butchered this, Mark. I think I actually already showed the answer on this, and I can throw another question out there if we want to do this. In fact, I think I will do that. If you see the question, I think I've already answered that with, I got ahead of myself a little bit.
No,
Is it about the tank horizontally?
yes, but you didn't answer it.
Okay, all right,
Yep, yep.
go ahead, go ahead.
So the question is, A2L refrigerant tanks will need to be upright in your service vehicle. Once again, it's a true false selection. And so, yeah, basically, in terms of what you think, in terms of cylinder orientation in your service vehicle, is it required to be upright or not? Okay, so we'll give folks a couple minutes, or not a minute or so. Once again, we're racing to that over 60%. So this might go a little quicker. Okay, we're actually over 70% on this one. And
Nice.
once again, Don, I think, yeah, I'll say, the information I believe is getting out there, because 94% responded false. Only 6% responded true.
Yeah, and I wondered what that would have looked like a year ago, because even on
Yeah.
webinars, they were still saying that. It's been a big change, and that was very welcome news, as you know, Mark. So yeah, you are corrected. We're going to allow those tanks to lay on their side. Again, the thought process on the EPA, you don't know what you don't know, right? They don't know what we know. We don't know what they know. It's not the world we live in. So the thought process on that, to have that tank vertical, was to have a vapor buffer or barrier, if you will, up against that ruptured disc on the tank. Their fear was that if you laid it on the horizontally, like we do now, that if you were driving around your van, maybe on rough terrain, or took a turn, that liquid could somehow splash up against that ruptured disc if the tank was a little warmer, and send it off unexpectedly. So like a premature rupture. So they really wanted that tested, and like I said, Chemours, kudos to them. They did that before I came here. Actually, it got approved after I came here, but they've been working on that for quite some time. So you will be able to lay the tanks up horizontally like we. And keep in mind, as always, it's always been the proper way to do that is, you never want that safety device, whatever it is, whether it's a ruptured disc or this new relief valve that I'm going to show you here in a little bit. You want that at the 12 o'clock position. You don't want it at the 6 o'clock position, just to be safe. Not a lot of people do that, but that's the proper way to actually do it. Okay. Now we're moving away from colored tanks, as I'm sure you've all heard by now. I don't know how many times I had people sending me pictures of tanks with no color, saying, "Hey, is this some of that stuff that's coming in illegal? That's not supposed to be sold here?" And I said, "No, that's the new color." So the difference here will be the red stripes will be your A2L tanks. Some people say it's an off-white. Some people are calling it a tan or a gray, if you will. No matter what you call it, it's going to be a clear color. On the A1 tanks as we use today, they did away with colors. The fear here was, from my understanding, was take that 407A tank, for example. The fear was that if they get a tank of A2L refrigerant that was just a little bit off green to that, that someone, new or old, would grab the wrong one. And I know that's been a situation before with 410A and 404A before, or not 404A, but refrigerant before. So that was the purpose behind it. Okay. Also, the purpose for the left-handed threads. So you'll have a red band around it. Also, by the way, the recovery tanks will also have a red band on them. They will also have a left-handed threads, by the way, if you haven't heard yet. Those are being produced right now as we speak, and about a month and a half ago or so. All DACs will have left-handed adapters. You will need an adapter to go on that to change it back to right-hand threads. I know that sounds a little silly. I didn't really like the idea at the beginning, to be honest with you. But being a technician for years in the field, and spending so many years in a truck, and our oldest son being a technician or licensed contractor today, you see nationwide, and I'm sure in your area, new technicians starting in the industry every day. And there's thousands of them nationwide. So, and some of them, like it or not, are being put in positions that they're not ready for. Same thing happened to me. I went from preventive maintenance to running service calls simply because we were 50 calls behind. So I like this idea now even more so, and here's why. If Julie or Jim are out on that call and they're new to service and they go out there and they go to try to put their hoses on that tank and it doesn't go on, I'd rather see them call you at the distributor or the service manager or someone they trust and say, hey, don't get me fired, but this isn't going on. Stop what you're doing. Does it have a red stripe around it? Yes, it does. Okay, that's A2L. So it's a learning curve. It's more of a pause button, if you will. And I really, really like that. Okay. So those are two flags. If you knowingly put A2L refrigerants in an existing system, you are knowingly breaking law. Okay, so the red stripe, the left-hand threads, that will be your go-to. And a lot of the tool manufacturers are making their own little adapters with a little more flexibility, a little more length on them, and they're all really, really promoting that out there right now. There'll also be a counterfeit shrink wrap on the tank itself, and that really has to do with some of the counterfeit stuff coming in. I know Chemours here has shared a lot of information with me when I first came on board about systems not running correctly, specifically supermarket rack systems, and they were scratching their head, couldn't figure out what was going on. They went and tested the refrigerant and found a chemical in there that wasn't even supposed to be in there. Come to find out, it came from somewhere else. And, you know, so it's very, very strict regulations to come through there to make sure we have what we're saying is on the label, okay? A2L cylinders will have a relief valve safety, not a ruptured disc, and I'll go into a little more depth on that. So the way a ruptured disc works, on the left-hand side, you see the A1. If it gets above a certain temperature, and I'm going to say pressure, a lot of people throw out there 130 or 125 degrees. It's not a perfect science, to be honest with you, because every temperature or every refrigerant is going to have a different pressure temperature relationship. As we all know, it's our saturation, right? So it's going to be more based on pressure depending on what that is. So I really don't like to throw an exact number out there, but they use and have used for storage temperature 125, 130 degrees, somewhere thereabouts for years. So the way it works is if it were to get above those temperatures or above the specs on that tank, the ruptured disc is designed to pop and blow the whole charge. So you're keeping from something catastrophic happening, like turn it into a giant hand grenade. That's how A1 tanks, and that's how they still will be moving forward. Okay. Now to the right side of the slide here, we see an A2L tank. Now this is going to be more like a relief valve, if you will. Okay. It's spring-loaded relief valve. It's set just a little bit higher pressure. For the 454B, for example, not much more, but similar to it. The difference here, the big takeaway from this is because it's an extra step they wanted to take, that wasn't required on the left-hand threads, it wasn't required for this safety device. It's just an extra measure that the industry decided they were going to do to put everybody at ease. And what it's going to do is, if it should exceed that pressure that it's rated for, it will just burp and let enough pressure off there to put it back into a safety zone. Okay. I know, if you used 125 degrees Fahrenheit or 130, you wouldn't be in your truck anyways, but anything's possible. Now, being from Ohio, I've never seen it happen. But that I teach in the South, like all of us do, we run into people, and I've ran into people with a long career, and it's happened to them a couple times. One gentleman was telling me he stepped inside in Florida for about an hour, came out, and he had left the tank on the driveway, and it was out there spinning around. So it does happen, not so much in the North or the Midwest from what I understand, but I have never had it happen to myself, but it can happen. So that's the story behind your tanks. New to A2Ls, I want to show this with you. I'm coming to the end here. This is a new, if you haven't, I've shared it. We shared this the first time we did the chill zone. And this is something that's been out probably about 2 months now, but it's really, really cool. It's an interactive map of the US, and you can touch. California's highlighted only because the person who was doing this webinar had his mouse on California, but it's all blue, and you touch on the state you're located. It does a drop down, and it literally tells you in real time cities, home rule states being added, A2L standard adoptions, NFPA, your fire, equipment categories. It breaks everything down for you, so you know in real time what county, what city, what municipality you're in, where you're at, whether it's in the code books already or whether it's already been approved in the state but just hasn't gotten in the code books yet. Really, really cool interactive map. And the reason I say this is really cool, because we've been doing training for a long time, and you would try to have to remember everybody, what the different states required at the different cities and what have you. Because some people maybe it's at one time wasn't approved for the state, but it was approved in the city. So it was a little confusing. So this was well needed, and excited about having it. So share it with your customers, if you will. Here's just a trifold. You can go to AHRI storage, A2L refrigerants or something like that for search. It comes up very easy if you just put AHRI A2L storage. It's a little trifold color, kind of gives you an outline of it. They are now trying to get it implemented in the states and at the local jurisdictions. This was the recommendation. It has not been enforced yet, but it soon will be going into the future. They're going to try to implement it into the codes and what have you for storage and what have you. So just some of the resources I have here for Chemours. Obviously, go to opteon.com. We're setting up our training page. It's moving quite well. Soon, not all that long, we'll have these videos here on there. We'll have some on-demand stuff. We'll take your requests for in-person training and webinars. And also, you find any literature you want out there. Everything that I showed you, any chart or anything like that, or that you see online, somebody posting PT charts, whatever, that's all free to you, okay? It'll go, you can just download whatever you want. If you ever need help with that, you can always email me, okay? The tech-to-tech support all the time, really, really good tech support. I used this when I was a contractor before. They respond really, really fast, and I really like that. You can also sign up for A2L refrigerant newsletter. Comes out, I think, every couple of weeks. If you don't like it, delete it. It's pretty good information, though. And then we also have, last but not least, our Dr. Chuck checkup with Dr. Chuck videos. They're kind of little 2-minute, 3-minute, did you know kind of a thing, fun facts that Chuck shares with you about different topics. I think they're in their 4th season right now. They're really, really cool if you're on the fly or waiting for your next call, or just having lunch and you want to watch something. Obviously, we have a LinkedIn page, Twitter, Facebook, or X, I guess it is now, and a YouTube channel. And if you go to the YouTube channel, if you missed last month's of this webinar last month, you can go there and see this. It's in our YouTube channel. You go to Opteon YouTube, and you'll find all the Dr. Chuck videos, all the series from 4 years ago up till today. And you'll also be able to see these webinars is where we're hosting those at, okay? A couple more things. I'm not affiliated with any of these. I know all of them. I'm friends with a lot of people in the industry. AHRI has some good stuff. They have the A2L task force. ACA has some good things. We've worked with most of these people to help them set up their training on their online stuff. Hardy has some good things. HVAC School Pad podcast is all free. Everything's free there. ESCO has some good stuff. RSES, which I'm a member. Copeland, Field Piece, just to name a few. Hopefully I didn't miss anyone. There's plenty of stuff out there. The takeaway from that is get training. There's plenty out there, however you like to get it. I know usually typically everybody wants it in person, but there's a lot of stuff out there, just some basic stuff like this webinar today that you can get for free. Okay, I'm going to open it up to questions now. I don't know if we have any yet, Mark, or not.
Okay, Don, we just have a couple. One of them might have been addressed, but the question is, if I have an older piece of electronic equipment, how do I know if I can use it for an A2L?
Yeah, so again, whatever that piece of equipment is, you need to go to the manufacturer's website. And I hate kind of, pushing, not having the answer for you or pushing you away, but that's what you have to do. You have to go there. More than likely, you're going to be pleasantly surprised. I haven't heard differently, but that doesn't mean I've heard everything about the tool manufacturers, but I work with a lot of them. We do training together. I don't want to name drop, but I've done quite a bit of training with the recovery manufacturers over the nation. And just go to their website or call them if you have to, or go to the wholesaler where you bought that piece of equipment at, and they probably they'll have an answer for you though. So do your homework, but moving forward, only buy everything that says A2L compliant. Hopefully that answers it well enough.
Yep. And then the other question was, I know you had gone over the storage issue, but if I'm storing a jug at the shop, is there anything that I should be doing differently with an A2L versus the traditional HFCs?
Great question, and the answer is no. It's pretty much, again, business as usual. Now, from what I understand, if you're a large contractor that has a big storage facility similar to a distribution or a wholesaler, I believe from what I understood was that trifold, you'll actually use those same guidelines for that if you store a lot of refrigerant, which, I mean, the only time we ever did that when I was a service manager is if, you know, you bought R22 cheap in the early before it got spring, and you bought 3 or 4 skids for it, you know, so you could, when it got hot, it got more expensive. So, but that is the only guideline we have now as far as storage. As far as a onesie, twosie tanks and things like that, or even a dozen or 2 dozen, it's pretty much business as usual. Nothing's changing here. And by the way, those safety features, that relief valve I was talking about, those have been used on larger tanks for years. So it's not really anything new to us. It's been around for a long time. And again, it wasn't even mandatory. They did it just to take an extra measure for removing any fear from anyone. So.
So we have another question. It says, how much space does it take to dissipate an A2L?
So we have I have that information on slides too. So what you're going to see moving forward is whatever manufacturer you buy from, OEM wise, they're required to put inside their manual the actual square footage you need for the refrigerant that you're using. Okay, it is very, very lenient. Okay, it takes a lot of it. Unlike propane, it takes a lot of concentration of A2L in a very, very small spot to get a flame. I think I'll try to wing this off the top of my head. The example I use on my slides that I pulled out of one of the manuals already is if you had a unit that had, let's say you have a 3,000 square foot, and let's say the unit come with 11 pounds, now this is not square footage for the room, this is the whole house. You need like 167 square feet. It literally is like, the whole house being the size of a shed. Now, when it comes to mini splits, that's going to be different. And what I mean by that is when you do install mini splits, you'll see in the manual, that'll be calculated by the room and not the whole home because the door could possibly be closed. But on a split system, everyday business in a residential system, you'll be able to use the whole house, and the number is really, really low. I mean, a small home to me, I've done a lot of new construction through the years, is maybe 1,200, 1,500. I mean, you don't see many homes the size of, less than 900 or something like that. And I think it was like 167 square foot on 11 pounds. So it wasn't a whole bunch. So you won't use transfer vents or anything like that. Now, when you get up in the larger commercial stuff, that equipment's not out yet. You'll see more guidelines. It won't be just a sensor in the equipment. That's going to go off at 20% LFL, by the way. We're going to get an equipment moving down the road. So all the manufacturers seem to have agreed on that's going to be 20% LFL. And until anything hits LFL, it's not even flammable. And the sensors are going to go off at 20%. They were required to go no more than 25%, but it seems like everybody, and that's probably got to do with the sensor manufacturer, that everybody uses, the same ones or multiple ones that do similar techniques like that. So, but when you get into larger applications, depending on the square footage of the home, and I'm talking about really big applications, like when you do walk-in coolers and things, you'll have check valves and solenoid valves that'll shut that down and isolate it just in the box, for example, and you might see a pump down to the outdoor condenser going outside, low pressure cutouts, ventilation possibly bringing in and out, but we're waiting to see how that's going to work out right now. Excuse me.
Okay, thanks, Don. That's all the questions that we had. I'll just wait maybe just a couple seconds to see if anybody else had any additional questions. But I would say this in general, Don, it was a fairly comprehensive discussion, soup to nuts on tanks, trucks, and tools. So with that, Don, do you have anything else before we will conclude the webinar?
Can you see what Corey said? There was 2 more questions, Mark. I can't see them. She mentioned through the chat on Teams that we still have these 2 other questions. So I'm not sure if you can see those.
So there is one. Will you be sending a video of the meeting? Yeah, my understanding is that this meeting is recorded. It will be up on our website. So, there'll be a library of these webinars. So if you've missed a previous chill zone, you'll be able to go back and get that. Or if you miss one, in the future. And I would say the other part is uh, this chill zone will be a reoccurring monthly webinar on a specific topic. So as we send the invitations out, you'll want to bookmark it. But in the event that you do miss a particular one, there'll be a link where you can access the library.
Yeah. Yeah, and to follow up on what Mark said, literally, I saw it posted on LinkedIn before I even saw it. So behind the scenes, they put this right into our Optian.com YouTube channel immediately, and it's there, access to free to everyone. So this will give it 24 hours maybe, and it should be out there that you can share with others too. And please share it if you would. Okay, but thanks, Mark, for working with us today.
Yeah, there's one other question I was able to ask. Just recently heard Europe added 1234YF to F-gas compliance. Have you heard anything about this?
I have not. Mark, you would probably be stronger in that area than I am. I have not heard anything about that. I know 1234F is the lowest GWP that I'm aware of. It doesn't get much lower than that. So I don't want to comment on anything I'm not familiar with, but I try to stay up in Europe as much as I can, but I honestly don't know. I don't want to mislead you.
Yeah, my understanding is I don't think it has, but we can follow up on that. I mean, we've been selling 1234YF to the European auto industry since 2017, and I have not heard any change to that. But we can follow up and post it.
Yeah.
We've got a question. Another one that came in. POE 46 for R32. We'll ask Goodman, but I had not seen this in any webinar or perhaps missed it. So you could maybe just spend a minute or so talking about the.
Yeah. So I've actually, I don't want to say I've educated a few people on it, but if some of you might know, I was the senior technical trainer for Copeland for quite a few years prior to coming to Chemours a couple years ago. So if you go to their AE Bulletin 93-11, Copeland, AE Bulletin 93-11, it has all the compressors, all the applications, and it shows the refrigerant that's allowable and the POE oil that they'll be using. So you go to R32 and you'll see it's POE 46. And I worked with the Daikin folks too, and it has been confirmed. So Daikin, Goodman, and Amana will have that, because there was a little concern behind the scenes in those engineer meetings when I was there that we were going to have 3 replacement compressors, one for 410A and one for 454B, different model number, and then you'll have one for R32 A2L compressor, but POE 46. R32 runs a little warmer. So just to give you a little stuff on it, that useless information I got stuck in my head, R32 or R125 that was in 410A has 2 purposes, and that was to keep the discharge line cool from the R32. It's also a fire deterrent. You find that chemical in fire extinguishers. So when we take away that R125, it's the harshest of all the GWP, the chemical in there. It removes it down to 466 from 1800, so that's quite a bit. They bumped up the 32 to 68% from 50, and then added that 1234AF. But now we're going to run a little warmer on the discharge line. Daikin has chose to go with R32 straightforward, and it's straight, pure R32, unlike where we have that 1234AF, that 30% that doesn't run warm, 1234AF, that cools it down a little bit. So you're going to see a little bit of difference. Normal operation for, don't quote me exactly on this, but normal discharge line, I believe, is somewhere going to be just over 200 degrees Fahrenheit, 6 inches out from the compressor, where 410A, I believe, was around 180. 454B will be around 190 something there. And I'm just ballparking it, but that's the reason. Anything that runs warmer, obviously, anything like a car engine, we have to have a higher viscosity. It doesn't make it a bad thing. It just runs a little warmer.
Okay. Okay, let me just do one last check, but I think we are good. Let me just, that was me. Okay, I think that's it. So with that, Don, I want to thank you as I had stated in the beginning. I'm sure everybody on the line learned at least something new today. I would say I was highly encouraged with the poll questions around the general understanding, just the high level of understanding around A2Ls, as you had mentioned, even from a year ago. So I would encourage everybody on the call, if you have other branch personnel or other branches that you know weren't on this, that this is going to be a routine monthly call just to educate everybody on a specific topic around A2L. So once again, thank you. Thanks for participating, and the webinar is concluded.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Mark.